Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I took a vacation pretty recently, so I've been away from both Twitch and YouTube for a bit, but I am back home, and I've got a new PvP build video for you guys. This build was an idea I had after seeing a couple of builds from my friend Blap, and he even helped me theory craft the final pieces of this build to get it feeling just right, so I just want to shout him out before we get into the build. Thank you again for your help, Blap. Now let's get into the Superstar and go over our basic character sheet. This build, our base class is Warden. For our race, we are a Dark Elf. Our Mundus is the Atronach. And we are Stage 3 Vampire. We're using Jewels of Misrule for our food, and the usual tripods for potions. Our attributes, we have 42 into health and 22 into magicka. You want to end up with 32k HP, 21k magicka, and 70k stamina on this build, and however you decide to get to those stats is fine, but that is where you want to end up at. Just a bit of commentary on some of the choices here before we get into the gear and skill lines, because I do think I'm going to get some questions about the base skill line. So I'm going to say that I firmly believe this build is best on the base Warden class because of the class script and what it offers, which we'll get into a little bit during this talk about the skill lines. But if you wanted to try this on base Dragonite or Arcanist, be my guest, but I do think it performs the best on base Warden. I went Dark Elf for this build because I wanted to push my damage a little bit higher in this setup because I was a little worried about the base weapon and spell damage numbers, and I didn't think Imperial was going to cut it. But the flame resistance has also proven to be very handy since we're a vampire on this build. That being said, I do think races like Imperial and Nord will also be really good on this build with a bit of enchant and attribute tweaks, but I'm going to recommend Dark Elf for this build. The hybrid max stats and damage passives are just very strong. Our skill line selections, we're going with Winter's Embrace, Herald of the Tome, and Ardent Flame. This build really focuses on status effect damage, so we choose these skill lines specifically because they offer a ton of percent-based passives that boost status effect damage, and I'm not going to go too into detail on all the skill lines themselves, but I do just want to touch upon some important skills and passives that highlight our focus into status effects and their damage for this build. So let's start off with Winter's Embrace. For Winter's Embrace, we get an insanely high chance of proccing the Chilled status effect from skills like Arctic Blast, passives like Glacial Presence, and we do get a general boost to our frost damage as well from the Piercing Cold. Winter's Embrace also is going to be our defensive skill line, and we do get quite a bit of defense from this skill line out of things like Ice Fortress, Major Protection from Northern Storm, as well as the Frozen Armor and Icy Aura passives. Herald of the Tome offers us increased class ability damage, sustain, and our weapon and spell damage buffs from Recuperative Treatise. We also get a further boost to our weapon and spell damage from Harness Quintessence, a boost to our penetration from Splintered Secrets, and most importantly on this build, we get a 15% damage boost to our status effects and a 55% status effect chance increase from Psychic Lesson. Ardent Flame is our single target DPS skill line and my personal favorite skill line in the game, so I do try to incorporate this into most of my builds. We do get a guaranteed source of the burning status effect from the initial hit of Burning Embers, as well as a guaranteed source of the poison status effect from the initial hit of Noxious Breath. Those two status effects also get boosted by 33%, as well as gaining a small bit of sustain whenever they proc from the combustion passive, and we also gain 5% damage to our flame and poison damage from World and Ruin. For the gear, we're running 2-piece Blood Spawn, 5-piece Xanmeer Spellweaver on our front bar, with 5-piece Rallying Cry on our back bar. We do have a trainee chest, and Satan Seducer is our mythic choice. This is 2 light armor sets, so we are in 4 light armor, 2 heavy, and 1 medium. For gear traits, all of our body pieces are impenetrable with the exception of our chest piece, which is reinforced, and these are all running the prismatic enchant on them. For jewelry, we're running 2 protective and 1 swift, with 2 weapon and spell damage and 1 magicka cost reduction. I do think the magicka cost reduction is pretty necessary here on Dark Elf, as we do not get any cost reduction through our racial passives, and abilities like Recuperative Treatise, Ice Fortress, and Arctic Blast are very hefty on the magicka, so we do want to kind of reduce those with this glyph. I would not suggest taking this off if you stick with Dark Elf. You could potentially take this off if you went Imperial and put something else here instead. For our weapons, we're running 2 maces on the front bar with Nerdhone and Charged, 1 with the shotgun damage enchant and another with an absorbed stamina enchant, and our back bar weapon is defending with the berserker enchant on it for a little bit more weapon and spell damage. Now just for like a little bit of commentary on these sets, Rallying Cry should be a surprise to absolutely no one because it is far and away the best set for solo and even small scale PvP. It gives us a lot of damage, and we are in a meta that features an insane amount of critical damage, and this is also the best way to mitigate that damage. Xanmeer Spellweaver is a new set, added in Update 47 that can be found in the new dungeon, Naj Kaldish. This set offers us great damage bonuses in the 2, 3, and 4 pieces, and the 5-piece further boosts our burning, chilled, and concussion status effect damage by 15%, as well as boosting our flame, frost, and shock damage by 5%. We don't take advantage of shock damage or the concussion status effect too much outside of our shock glyph, but all of the flame damage from Ardent Flame, frost damage from Winter's Embrace, and the boost to their status effects more than make up for that. The mythic choice here is the Saint Seducer for a couple of reasons. It offers us Major Courage, Major Berserk, and Major Force, which are all very strong damage buffs, while also applying some very strong minor debuffs to our targets. Another reason I went with this mythic is that these debuffs cannot be purged off as long as the target is in your mythic's AoE. This makes our survivability that much better when outnumbered, when people can't just purge off debuffs like Minor Cowardice, Minor Vulnerability, or Minor Maim. Bloodspawn is just an obvious choice for defense in open world PvP as well as ulti-gen. Pretty standard. If you wanted to change the mythic, I would suggest Mark and Ring of Majesty. Even Monomyth would be pretty good here as well. Again, for the reasons that I stated earlier, I just prefer Saint Seducer on this setup, but you are free to make the mythic choice that you prefer. Now let's take a look at our skill bar setups. Our front bar is Burning Embers, Arctic Blast, Noxious Breath, Molten Whip, Recuperative Treatise, and Dawnbreaker of Smiting. Burning Embers is our guaranteed source of the burning status effect on cast, as well as a strong single target dot end heal. Arctic Blast has the potential to be one of our hardest hitting abilities with all of the damage investment into the chilled status effect and frost damage that we have. It also functions as a stun that happens 3 seconds after the initial cast. Noxious Breath is our source of Major Breach and our guaranteed source of the poison status effect on cast, as well as just a very strong AoE ability and dot. Molten Whip is our single target spammable that boosts our weapon and spell damage by 100 and our Molten Whip damage by 20% every time we use an Ardent Flame skill up to 3 times. Recuperative Treatise is our major brutality and sorcery buff, as well as a bit of extra sustain and damage, and Dawnbreaker is here primarily for the passive weapon and spell damage we said it gives us, but it's also not a bad ultimate to use if you see an opportunity for it. Our back bar is Healing Soul, Race Against Time, Resolving Vigor, Cauterize, Ice Fortress, and Northern Storm. Healing Soul is our scribed version of the Wield Soul ability from Soul Magic. On this we have Healing, the Warden class script, and Major Vitality to boost our healing. Warden class script is the reason I chose base Warden for this build, because we don't have a traditional hard CC, and this together with Arctic Blast helps us get the stuns when we need them. It's also a very strong defensive tool when we're outnumbered. The ability to just hit a burst heal and drop an 8-meter AoE that snares people and stuns them, and if nothing happens, we do get a bit of sustain from it as well. So just all around, a lot of good things happening from this script. Race Against Time is our source of Major Expedition, as well as our snare and immobilization removal and immunity. Resolving Vigor is a single target hot, and our source of Minor Resolve, pretty standard here. Everybody knows how good this ability is. Cauterize is our source of Major Prophecy and Savagery, as well as an additional heal for ourselves and group members. On this build, I felt like it needed a little bit of extra healing. Cauterize made sense, and with all of our built-in damage from sets, skill lines, and status effects, I didn't really miss the damage from Flames of Oblivion on this build at all. Ice Fortress is our source of Major Resolve, as well as Minor Protection. The skill in and of itself offering a lot of defense for us. And Northern Storm is our main ultimate that also gives us Major Protection. For the CP, for our blue trees, we're running Deadly Aim, Focus Mending, Duelist Rebuff, and Ironclad. Any damage CP in place of Deadly Aim works fine here. I just prefer Deadly Aim when I'm using Ardent Flame because of all the double dipping its skills do in this CP. For Red CP, we are running Rejuvenation, Sustained by Suffering, Pain's Refuge, and Survival Instincts. On here, I felt like I needed the extra bit of sustain from Rejuvenation on top of the sustain, all the sustain that we do already have. But if you want to flex something out on Red CP, you can flex this one out for things like Fortified, Celerity, or Juggernaut are probably ones that I would recommend. Alright, and if you guys have made it this long into the video, thank you a ton for watching. I had a lot of fun putting this build together and playing it. It's been, like I said, a lot of fun, very surprising in how strong and effective it's been for me, open world. And if you guys choose to put the build together and give it a try, please let me know what you think about it as well. Thank you again, guys, for watching, and I will see you on the next one.